here with Miles Toast, Senior Level Designer for CD Projekt Red, currently working on Cyberpunk 2077. We are here with some forum questions. Let's start with a few level design questions, since that is your specialty. We know much of the map size comes from verticality. This has been mentioned many times. But will it be decent size horizontally as well? How many Novigrads could you fit into the playable size?
Oh, I have to give this boring answer of it's not possible, kind of. Because honestly, it isn't, and I can explain to you exactly why. And it's simply because the scale of Novigrad, just from the metrics, is very different to this, like the Witcher world to Cyberpunk world in general is very different. So when we look at the scale of, I don't know, a room in Cyberpunk, right? Let's assume 10 square meters. 10 square meters is a very different size in the actual game unit, sort of, in the Cyberpunk universe than it is in Witcher 3's universe. And that is simply because, for a couple of reasons, the perspective changes really how, first person to third person, right? How you perceive space. And that's something that we actually had to learn to cope with. Pretty much like, if you think about the scavenger's apartment at the beginning of last year's demo that we played, right? The first room, or like this first bit up until the tub, not the tub where Samuel Dawson is lying, but where you do the takedown in the video, that's like a over 90 square meter apartment.
Right.
Doesn't look like it is, right?
True.
If we did the same, like just metric size on the Witcher world, it would be insanely large as well. So it's literally, you know, like, and that comes also because we have different needs to the gameplay. So Roach will never move as fast as a car, right? True. And if we think about quests and pacing, then we might say, okay, we want this conversation between NPCs to be 10 seconds long as they walk alongside each other or ride alongside each other. So that 10 seconds, you will bridge a very different distance between Night City and Witcher 3, right? And so you can't really overlay them on top of each other and actually compare them, because Novigrad would end up being way too small. Probably, you know, and I'm making these numbers up now, just riding through the length of Novigrad, if it was just one straight road, you would be done in like 10 seconds with a car, right?
True,
super fast. So it is really, really hard, if not impossible, to compare. We would probably adjust this, need to adjust the scaling and all that stuff to be properly measurable. And we don't really have time and any incentive to do that.
Fair enough. Cool, let's move on to the next one. We've got another level design one. How points of interest, world exploration are implemented? Are there question marks on the map similar to the Witcher 3?
We don't really have our marker system like properly finished yet. We're still playing around with it, but of course we're entertaining several ideas as to allowing players how to find content. Because of course there's one thing, and as a big open world fan and for example Breath of the Wild fan, I understand this. There's a big amount of fun that you can get from simply exploring a world without knowing what is out there. But then there's also the type of player that I also occasionally find myself to be in, which is I get home, I have 2 hours to kill, right? And I want to play, and I don't really have time to sort of, you know, like look for things to explore. And at worst, I'll run around and have 2 hours of nothing happening, right? Because I'm just sort of shortly before where there would be something, I'll turn around and go somewhere else, right? And of course you could partially blame that on level design, but you can, you know, like the world design or whatever, by not attracting players enough or so. But we need to sort of consider like all types of players that are there, right? And how to accommodate them. We want as many players as we can to experience our stories. And so we will try to play around with a system that suffices for everyone. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that we'll be able to do it for Cyberpunk because I can't really go into details there, but what we did in Witcher 3 is also enable options, right, for players to actually tweak the display of map pins on their maps to their liking.
A big thing in The Witcher 3 actually for me was just turning everything off. and just naturally finding points of interest just through the landscape and things like that. How would you tackle that in Cyberpunk, where there's a lot more verticality? You're stuck in buildings, for example. How would you guide the player to something you want them to see?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's actually one that we're not struggling, but sort of tackling every day still, and we're doing also a lot of experimenting with, which is part of why we can't release the game yet. So just get lost. You know, as nice as it might look right now, there's still a lot of work to do. And yeah, one of the ways we do it, I mean, is the sort of trick that we learned, of course, also from Witcher 3, is that landmarks are important. I guess it's not just Witcher 3, but many open world games, right? So having recognizable landmarks is something that allows players to sort of create this mental map and allow you to navigate around certain landmark just by looking at it, going, okay, I remember this, and I can relate to where I am because I see where I am in relation to the object. Okay. Anyway, so the difference between Witcher 3 is, of course, that we don't have as much of a far sight than we have in Witcher 3 in Cyberpunk, and that just means for us that we also need to make smaller landmarks, in the sense that we need to think of the world in smaller sections and use landmarks more often. Maybe, we have like an area where there's a lot of characteristic pipes going around that have a certain color. In an industrial area, right, you might find these kind of landmarks that can help you navigate in Santo Domingo, for example. Then what I could also imagine, and now I'm sort of brainstorming, is having characteristic ad spaces. That might be really cool. Some statues, maybe, or even the layout of roads. If you have like a very particularly characteristic sort of shape of how roads connected in an area,
It's very memorable.
yeah, exactly. You can play with color probably, trees, right? That's something, so the area might feel very green to you. And speaking of color, we actually have a lot of these, since we have 6 unique districts, we sort of have this ambition to kind of create the same differences that you feel between Novigrad and Skellige. So you will always be able to tell, okay, in what district you are in, and straight off the bat, just from the atmosphere, from what the people are doing there, who is living there, and how the architecture is. And we see things similarly in Night City. The thing though is that, there will be a lot more dry shrubbery, right? Because climate is a bit different in 2077. However, that doesn't stop rich people or corporations from using actual plants as a sort of rich people's decoration, and it's actually something that will mark.
Maybe a status indicator.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good word of putting it. And it's the same thing with wood in general, right? Wood has become a material that is sort of associated with the rich. Now, wood is abandoned nowadays, but that's very different as a material in 2077, right? So, as you can imagine, the trees become a luxury good. And that's actually quite, part of what makes working in Cyberpunk so interesting, because you have to look at things through such different lenses, but it's amazingly fun to do that.
What are the mechanics of the world feeling alive? Are there schedules, action points, and timetables for NPCs? How do the crowds work? How does the city live? What do you introduce in the city to make it?
That's not exactly my area of expertise.
Sure.
I can't really go. We have an actual full-on open world team just for that kind of stuff. What I can say though is that, of course, we're trying to evolve from what we've done with Witcher 3. We usually don't like to take steps back with what we've done. So, and with Cyberpunk, we're actually trying, for example, to increase the amount of NPCs that we can render, for example, and we've done so, right? Last year we've shown you this crossing in Watson in the demo, and you've seen how many people actually live there. I don't really know the depth of how detailed their each NPC's actual daily activities will be. But on the other hand, I would, as a designer, also say, So how much real interest is that to the player to actually, I mean, it's kind of cool to be able to say, hey, I can follow an NPC around and see what he does all day, but in a city of millions, is that really
How
something?
important is
Yeah, how important is that compared to, you know, doing quests?
Fair enough.
And
That makes
interacting
sense.
with characters. That's not to say that we're actually going to scale back on that. It's just
Right.
my sort of personal take on this whole scenario, because how many of the players will actually spend time to follow each NPC around? And there's so many, and you know, in a city like Night City, people do tend to be anonymous, right? Like if you look at cities like Tokyo, people are just pretty much
They're very
to
private,
themselves,
yeah.
right? And you might see a face, and then it's just gone.
Fair enough. Unfortunately, that's it for level design questions from
Go
the
ahead,
forums.
Bill. Wow, tech
I do
blog.
have a ton of gameplay ones though.
Sure. Let's have
But
it.
I do apologize in advance. Obviously, Miles is a level designer. Any more intel on the RPG side? There was a talk that it'll be more shooter and less an RPG, and we will be pigeonholed it to choices.
What?
I don't know where this rumor came from, but seeing the demo, I can safely say that's not the case. But maybe you can expand on that.
No. No, Cyberpunk is a full-fledged RPG and in all its ways.
Would you
it's-
call it an RPG first, shooter second?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of just character customization and freedom of gameplay that we put into this game is, you know, that's not just a shooter. It is really sort of trying to bring a pen and paper experience, and that is sort of the ultimate form and the, you know, the how do you say, the original form of the RPG, right? Yeah, and we're trying to bring that sort of into a AAA video game format. Now, of course, we cannot give you the actual unprecedented level of freedom that we have in a pen and paper RPG, but we're trying to get as close as we can by, you know, like we have the character customization, of course, the life path choices, which is really interesting. That allows you to really role play your character as well, right? I keep using this example of you have, you know, if you grew up as a street kid and a bit of a rough start in life, I guess, then you might have a very different connection to life on the streets, and if you meet a gang, for example, you'll be able to converse with them in a very different way, right? You understand the mannerisms as opposed to maybe a corporate V that you know, is not really familiar with the ways of the street.
I'm guessing vice versa.
Exactly.
Corporal
There's-
V goes in a very corporate environment.
Yes. And I'm not saying that, you know, we always get like an advantage, because if a corpo is in a corporate environment, you have an advantage. No,
Yeah.
you can actually fall like, in the same traps that
Yeah.
you know, you would in a modern workplace as well. It's just that it changes the sort of dynamics that you can experience within these different social settings almost. And that's actually really cool. And, you know, we take this system really, really far. So we have your attribute points that also affect it. I guess this is sort of the classic. You can be intimidating if you're really strong looking, right? But it's also, of course, you know, your ability points and perks. Even those can influence the conversation options that you have available. So if you're a skilled techie and you notice some device, you might be able to talk shop with whoever is, you know, showing this. We had the example of Placide, right? We're talking about the animal tech that has been provided to them, and there's some options that if you're a high-level engineer, they actually can go and like, yeah, man, that van doesn't look like a normal van. That looks pretty much like a high-end van of sorts. I don't want to spoil too much.
Of course.
And I think that's actually really, really cool, and you know, that is of course more about the sort of where a story meets with the RPG gameplay mechanics, right? But of course, also that can influence outcomes, right? It's not just role playing.
Right.
And then we can bring all of this also to the gameplay side again, where all of these choices actually manifest, for example, in the way we set up levels, or rather the other way around. We provide the options for choices for you to be made. So when we design levels, we try to really hard provide as many options to solve them as possible. There will always be a way to play a level stealthily. There will always be a way to just shoot your way through, and we'll provide the necessary covers needed and all that stuff. And then in between you have all these different tools and toys we give you, depending on what kind of specializations or hybridizations you go into. Like if you're engineering, you find lots of gadgets that you can manipulate. You'll be able to use your spider bot also, right? The good old flathead.
Yeah,
Bloody
I remember that from last year. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we also have, of course, a lot of devices that you can hack and do different things with. And if you're particularly strong, you also get certain advantages of the level. This can also be your agility. And you can mix and match these sets of abilities and really create your own character. That's what we keep saying in the presentation. I really want you to be able to do that. That's how we designed the skill tree, right? We don't want to lock players into a certain specific role and allow them to really sort of, it sounds buzzwordy, but have this ultimate role-playing fantasy and fulfill their character fantasy.
Yeah.
Ideally, in my mind, the way I would like people to start Cyberpunk is by sort of bringing up the character screen, then sort of sitting back and thinking for a bit what kind of character they want to play in the world, and then sort of really go for it and build it, right? Choose the life path, make him look like he should, like he or her should look like. Dress him up how you imagine he should look like. Use the weapons that you want to use. Are you going for melee or range? If you go for melee, do you use hammers or maybe your own fists or maybe katanas or many other different weapons, or do you even or do you instead opt for ranged weapons, where even there we have a large variety of options? Do you prefer to play things stealthy? Do you prefer to take things with a guns blazing approach? Lethal, non-lethal? What is your moral codex? And then really just kind of go for it and role play that. And I guess when you do that, at the latest, no one can go and blame us that Cyberpunk is not an RPG, because we provide all the systems that support your role-playing experience.
Your fantasy, ultimate Cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's
Excellent.
the idea.
Nice. Are there any full body third person animations visible while walking by a mirror, for example?
I mean, basically, do you see yourself when you walk past a mirror?
Anything more like that? That where we can see RV in full detail?
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of one of the tricks that we try to use to allow you, even though it's first person,
I
to
guess
see
the bike
yourself.
is one. Bike is a good example.
Yeah, I mean vehicles in general as well, right? But yeah, a bike, since you're at a shelter, right, you can actually see your own character. Mirrors exist in the game, so you walk by and you get reflected. And of course we do cutscenes in which you will see your character from a third person point of view. And we use tricks, right? So it's actually quite fun because we can be quite inventive with it. If you think of the Ripper Dog scene from last week's demo, for example, where they take the eye out, right? And then for briefly you see yourself.
You see yourself with the
eye.
eye.
And that's sort of like one of these tricks that we try to apply to give V as a character also as much screen time as possible. But on the other hand, there's really something for the first person animations that really makes it much more immersive and really puts you in there. When Sasquatch grabs you, for example, and starts beating you, I don't think this would have nearly the same effect if it happened in third person.
I think so too.
And so it's a balancing act, and our priorities are always the level of immersion. Because oddly enough, sometimes seeing your own character, if we don't do a job in the cutscene, for example, it might be really weird. So we always try to contextualize.
Might pull you out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I seeing it? But if we can contextualize it, like the situation with our Ripper Dog friend over there, it's fine.
Those were amazing. One last question before, because I don't want to keep it too long. There's a question, the big question, gameplay related on forums at the moment is, how do skills affect weapon accuracy? Like if you're a non-FPS player, like I'm not a fan of shooty games.
Skills as in the player's skills or in
Or
the
skills
game?
in the game. Like how would that affect accuracy of the weapons?
Yeah, there's actually several mechanics that we are trying to explore here. And one is, for example, literally using weapons makes you better with them. Also in a way, increasing your accuracy. For example, if you have like a larger crosshair, the more proficient you become. The crosshair gets smaller, basically allow you to be more proficient or accurate with your shots. But we also, for exactly the kind of crowd that is not necessarily from a shooter background, we have weapons such as smart weapons, right, that actually track their enemies with bullets. And that way you basically need to sort of approximate
It's much more
aiming.
forgiving.
Yeah, exactly. They don't deal as much damage, but they get the job done, right? And again, if you're less skilled with playing shooters, those are probably the weapons that you might want to use. There's similar tricks that we try to do in World that allow players to modify how the guns behave. And those are, there are certainly some that are also catered to players that are not as proficient with shooter gameplay as others maybe.
Is the skill perk progression system strictly bound to passive boosts, like plus X% damage or things like that? Or is there a lore narrative justification for this? Like bullets are not faster if you push the trigger stronger.
No, it's not just passive. It's not just passive. But a lot of the progression also, I mean, you know, your skills don't. Skills can be more passive, but we have a lot of customization options for weapons, right, that actually alter how the weapons behave. And we try to actually keep it realistic and believable with how we use our skills and what kind of bonuses they provide to your, basically all aspects of V's life. However, I think you'll be surprised to see that there's quite some creative solutions to sort of marry the two ideas, and I hope that players will be able to notice that and appreciate it.
Well, the forum people are very savvy, so no doubt they'll notice all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Miles, thank you very much for the interview. If you have a message for the forums, you might want to give.
Thank you very much for having me. Again, I would love actually to hang out and do many more questions here. It's just so busy. We're here at Gamescom. I'm actually going to have an appointment, and then later I have a double slot of presentations, 2 hours.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'll survive. And I hope so will you guys. The wait until Cyberpunk releases. As of the shooting of this video, that will be 237 days. Of course we keep count. We know how much time we have left. We feel a bit of pressure, but but we're confident that we can deliver. And it is also partially because of you guys, of course, and your immense support. And while I'm not interacting with you directly here, I know that for the fact, you know, when I go to the public area and I see the gigantic queues that we have here, and people approach me and tell me how amazing they think Cyberpunk is and the work that we're doing. It is just, every time, seriously, is a blessing, and I can't thank you enough for the kindness that you show us. It is really what gives us strength, and we're making this game as much for ourselves as we do for you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles.